This is Cakes and Ladders. We're at 173 Simon Street in Auckland. We are Auckland's only board game cafe. You come in, it's $2.50 per person per hour, and you can play any of our over 350 games.
So James, thanks for having us at Cakes and Ladders, Auckland's only board game cafe. It's a really interesting concept and it's also a really cool name. Where did that come about?
We searched quite hard to get a good name for Cakes and Ladders. My wife and I both love puns, and the biggest board game cafe on the other side of the world is called Snakes and Lattes. So we were like, oh, we're on the other side of the world, we'll do it the other way around, Cakes and Ladders. And what it's about is just like people coming together and playing some board games, having a good time face to face rather than sort of digital, non-personal interaction.
The first bit of Cakes and Ladders, I'm a particularly big fan of. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the cakes. We knew that when we had a name, Cakes and Ladders, we were going to have really good cakes. So we tested them out. We shopped around and found a really good place that does them, and we got them in that way. And we'd rather spend our time making the board games accessible rather than baking the cakes. So we found a good supplier, and we've stuck with them, and it's been amazing.
Yeah, and what got you into board games to begin with?
Interestingly, I don't know that I was never not into board games. My family was always a game family. We played a lot of games. And I always found it weird when people were like, oh yeah, I'm not really that into games. I'm like, what? I don't understand. Like, it's been bizarre that people who have been sort of converted or haven't yet been converted, they've been like, oh yeah, no, games are not that thing for me. I'm like, oh, really? But what about when you were a kid? What did you do? Like, what did you do?
Yeah.
All those hours.
And what's your favorite board game?
It really depends on the number of people. Like, if you've got a lot of people, I really enjoy Nuns on the Run, which is like hide and seek, the board game. If I want to like physically play a game, I like Rampage, where you literally build a city and then destroy it with your giant kaiju.
Yeah.
I quite like the involved games, like you've got your Elder Sign or your Eldritch Horror, where you're fighting against the Elder Gods. Or there's some amazing figurines from the Cthulhu Wars games, which, you know, they're this big and you're actually playing the Elder Gods destroying the world. But yeah, there's some of the simple games that are just really fun to go back to all the time. And some of the ones that are like just different are nice, like Hanabi, where you're playing with your cards facing the other players, so you don't know what you've got. Yeah, anything that's inventive is generally worth playing.
And the social aspect's important.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't like play and be on your phone. It's just you have to be present to play, and that's a real plus. I think, you know. You're going out with somebody, you know they're with you, they're having a good time, or you're having a group time, and there's some party games like Cash and Guns, where you're literally pointing guns at each other and trying to threaten each other to take a smaller cut of the loot. It's great.
And so this love of board games is always with you. Did you always want to own a board game cafe?
No.
Yeah.
Did not even know that it was a thing until about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And even then I knew it was a thing, but I was like, that's for somebody else to do. There's no way I could do that. And then we went to a place called Castles in Canada, which was very much like this, and there was just so many people having a good time, like lots of different types of people. There were a couple of old guys playing chess, some tourists playing games like we were, we had students playing some sort of a party game, we had some people into some really intense gaming, and just everybody was having a great time. The atmosphere was amazing. We were like, Auckland needs a place like this. When we get back home, we'll just find whoever's doing something like this and we'll get behind them, we'll see if we can get it going, and nobody was doing anything like it. So we're like, okay.
Guess it's us then.
Yeah.
And you made an interesting point, which is that there's so many different kinds of people that turn up to a board game cafe. What's been the experience here in Auckland?
Yeah, it's really hard to pin down a demographic. Like, we do get so many different types of people. I mean, we get a lot of business from the students because of our location, but they're by no means everything. We get like families coming in with their kids. We get grown-up families coming in with their grown-up kids and being like, hey, let's do this. We get 20-somethings, 30-somethings, 40-somethings. Yeah, it's really wide-ranging. I'd really be hard-pressed to pin it down to any one thing.
Yeah, that's been something that's really surprised me getting back into board games, is just how many different people like it, you know.
Yeah. Well, there's a massive renaissance in board games at the moment. There's a lot of different titles out there. People are developing a whole new range of board games all the time. So no matter what you like, there's going to be a board game for you.
Yeah, and something like Kickstarter helps because it lets new guys into the market when there was that barrier.
You're making a platform for anybody to enter. So we've got a bunch of New Zealand game designers who we stock, and they use Kickstarter a lot to, not just because it's the funding, but it's the word of mouth. It spreads your game, and everybody's like, oh, that is interesting. I do want to play that.
And what do you enjoy the most about running Cakes and Ladders? What really gets you up in the morning?
It's the community. So finding people who just come together, like people who get excited about the idea, people who enjoy playing the games, or people who didn't know that they were into board games or that they could be into board games. Like if you're teaching someone a board game, there's a click moment where the mechanics make sense in their head and suddenly they know how it works and they're having fun.
Yeah.
And that's amazing to see, like, day after day. You're like, oh, okay, from what I know about you as a group, like watching you interact, here's a game you might like, and then just watching it build in their heads. Some of the more complex games are amazing because they plant a seed and people will be like, I played the game and I didn't do that well, but then I thought about it all weekend and I came back and I'm gonna nail it this time.
I've been there.
Yeah,
Eldritch
exactly.
Horror.
Yes. Yeah.
That one's a real bastard to get your head around at the start.
Yeah. There's a lot of setup, but once you're there, it's amazing, and you're getting it, and you're either the Eldritch Horror is pounding on you, and you're like, oh no, Great Cthulhu's actually risen, or you're like, we're gonna do it. It's just such an amazing rush either way, and then even when you fail, you're just like.
Yeah, the thing I've noticed about coming here is that you spend a lot of time with the customers, talking to them, helping them through the games. How important is that personal touch?
It's absolutely vital. That's the difference between a board game cafe and a cafe that has board games.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of cafes will have like a couple of board games and things like that, but they don't have anybody who teaches you how to play. They don't have anything that you haven't played before. And that's what makes a board game cafe, is that there's someone there who loves board games, who can take the time to teach you, even if it's busy, to be like, okay, here's a couple of points, here's a couple of games you might like, see how you go.
And what's the response been like since opening?
It's been pretty good. It took a while to build because of our wide demographic. It was really hard to pin down how to advertise ourselves and say, hey, look, we exist. But now that word of mouth's sort of getting around, we're getting like busy every weekend. Friday nights are usually busy. Even the weekday nights, we're starting to get some momentum. Groups are coming in.
Awesome.
Like, we had a dessert club come in last week, which was amazing.
Yeah.
They all came in, had a good time. We've had some corporate bookings. So yeah.
And James, what would you like to say to the passionate gamer that hasn't discovered you guys yet, or the game curious out there in Auckland?
Well, it's easy to come in and try. It's not like a big commitment time-wise or financially. So just come in. There's a great selection. The place has a lot of games, and if you don't know how to play a game, it doesn't have to be a barrier. Even if you don't know like other friends into the groups, who are into games, you can like join one of our events and come along, and then there'll be other people who want to play, so you can make new friends who are into the same things you are.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for your time.
Cool, thank you.